All right, welcome back, everyone. Super excited for our next panel. Staying on theme, we're going to talk about MEV staking and validators and incentives on Solana. Again, I'm Bobby Beniers, principal investor at CoinFund, and today we are joined by a great panel of Nikki, Nick, Hayden, and Nitesh. I'm going to flip it over to you guys to introduce yourselves, and tell me your name, role, and kind of the project that you guys are building.
Cool. Hey guys, Nitesh again, CEO and founder of DFlow. We're building a Solana DEX aggregator.
Hey everyone, my name is Hayden. I'm at the Jito Foundation, leading BD on the restaking protocol.
Hey everyone, my name's Nick. I'm one of the co-founders of Helios. We're a developer platform on Solana and an RPC provider.
Hey, I'm Nicky, head of BD at Marinade Finance.
Awesome. So maybe to kick off, we've been talking about how Solana has like a pretty unique infrastructure for validators, MEV players, stakers, etc. Would love to just quickly touch on how each of your projects interacts with this, and kind of like what is different from other chains in the way that you interact with Solana.
Cool. I'll kick off again. We build a lot of stuff that cares deeply about the microstructure of the Solana network. We kind of study like the leader architecture of Solana, how transactions propagate across the network, and build a lot of like low latency, sophisticated tooling at that layer.
So the Jito network, I think you could think of, all these chains have some type of transaction supply chain. And I would say the Jito network is at the bottom of it on Solana. And so we have these block engines around the world that are receiving transactions from users and also collecting tips from these users. We're able to sort of forward those bundles or these sets of transactions to the leader, makes the chain more profitable. And the infrastructure is built, or at least like the thing that we're always thinking about is how to redistribute this value across the Solana network in a way that's equitable and decentralized.
Yeah, so it's relevant to us in a couple different ways. We run a validator ourselves, so obviously it's relevant for us for stake attraction and that side of our business. But also as an RPC provider, we do transaction delivery, and the stake mechanisms are important there because Solana has a guaranteed delivery or connectivity proportional to the amount of stake you have. They call it stake-weighted quality of service. And so I think what's interesting about Solana's stake mechanism is it's very easy for people to redelegate stake between validators. And so it's very relevant if you are someone who's trying to submit transactions that you have stake associated with your project so that you're able to reliably deliver transactions.
What I'd say is, Marinade's been around since 2021. And what we've noticed is that what's unique with Solana is stake tends to consolidate pretty heavily to the top, and that obviously leads to quite a bit of centralization. So Marinade's product now, and the way we interact with the network as is about helping to combat that centralization a bit, get that stake spread more evenly.
Awesome. All you guys are kind of like, in my view, working on improving performance and or fairness of submitting transactions on the Solana network. I'm curious, with that framing, like, what are the biggest like outstanding questions and challenges that exist in the ecosystem today?
I think Solana has a fairly complex read layer. And so participating and observing the stuff that happens is fairly difficult, and I know there are teams working on this. I think there's also an opportunity to create a situation that mitigates the bad MEV. And so there's a lot of activity on chain where users aren't getting the best execution. And so creating pipelines that make this process more fair, make it more transparent, and also reduces all of the bad behavior that happens is something that we're always thinking about.
Yeah, I guess I'll go. Another sort of problem that we have today, I think, is like fragmentation of different ways to submit transactions. You have the regular scheduler, right, which is native. You have Jito, You have other kind of different projects popping up with different sort of private order flow sort of mechanisms, and it makes it challenging for especially retail or like new developers to kind of come in and figure out like how can I actually have the best transaction submission, especially if you're trying to do anything related to trading or touching certain hot accounts that basically compete with these traders who have the know-how of which order flow to use.
I'd say for us, biggest challenge the way it works now is honestly on education side. So most users, don't understand a lot of the complexities that we're talking through today, right? So they're not sure if they're getting, their fair share of priority fees or MEV or commission and whatnot. So right now, it's just trying to be as transparent as possible, knowing that many of these stakers don't know or maybe even don't care about some of those small details. So that's what we try to solve for that.
Probably a larger scale problem on Solana just generally, but I think the market structure is sort of like needs to be improved. The sort of symptom of all of this is all of the transaction value that's leaked in sandwiching and other extractive forms of MEV. So the research work that Solana is doing with multiple leaders and app-specific sequencing is very helpful for us.
Awesome. Yeah, probably want to come back to app-specific sequencing later. But one of the recent changes in the Solana ecosystem has been Solana Improvement Document 96 and kind of creating a system where all of the tips go to validators instead of half being burned. Would love to hear what you guys think about this. Kind of like what are the downstream implications? Are you pro? Are you for? How does it impact your protocol, et cetera?
Actually, so I'll be giving a talk today on an upgrade that we're going to be making to Tiprooter, which basically will allow validators to use Tiprooter to distribute priority fees. I think, yeah, there's going to be this there's got to be more native ways, more standardized ways where validators could, transfer this value that they're creating for their stakers to their stakers. I think the reason why that would be valuable is because it's a delegated proof of stake protocol, and stakers having more visibility and transparency and more auditability around the way these validators are making money can ultimately sort of give them more context on who they should delegate their stake to.
So just to clarify, you're saying that today, if I stake with a validator, they're making all of these tips, and I trust them to distribute those tips to the delegators, but you're hoping for something more formalized and protocol ingrained. Awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's also worth clarifying for maybe some of the audience the difference between Jito's MEV tips and then the priority fee you can set within the native protocol. There's the SIMD you just mentioned is basically before half of the native fee went to the validator, the other half was burned. That one made it so that the full amount goes to the validator, and that right now has no distribution. There is also a recent SIMD, I think, that was actually passed. It was just a design-based one to actually distribute that to stakers as well. Generally, I guess to directly answer the question, though, I think not burning half is good because it generates more revenue for people who are basically the more you pack a block, the more revenue you get. So it's more incentive to basically make a faster network. Couple that with this distribution to stakers is just overall I guess a boon to the network.
Yeah, well, I think it seems like, especially on this panel, we all agree that more revenue for the validators is a good thing, as long as it's being shared with the users. For with Marinade, for instance, obviously the stake auction marketplace, it's the idea of that spirit of competition. We think that through this, in theory, right, these validators are competing against each other for the business of the stakers, that those extra fees that they're earning, right, will be then passed down, to the actual delegators themselves. Where right now it's tough, and it's tough to be transparent on for normal native staking, where if they're seeing any of those fees or not, as a staker.
Yeah, and it's probably going to get more competitive to attract stake. Up until 2024, the only I guess, like rewards that the chain were giving were from consensus layer rewards. And so you could think of like consensus layer rewards as being like the base amount of inflation that you're benefiting from if you're a validator or a staker. And after 2024, because of all the economic activity that picked up on Solana, there's this, execution layer rewards. And, another SIMD that I guess the SIMD didn't get passed, but Multicoin recently just had a SIMD where they wanted to reduce the inflation rate. Even though it didn't get passed, I think it's a matter of not if, but when something like that does get passed. It's just about like the community and like the validators and stakers, if we can get them involved in governance as well, sort of arriving at what the mechanism would look like. But when you see when we're going to eventually see, at least in my opinion, that inflation rate like compress, all of the rewards that stakers and validators are going to get are going to be coming from execution. And so it just makes sense that the more that validators are sort of like sharing these fees with their stakers will dictate like how much stake they get.
I think this point of competition between validators that you brought up is really interesting. Obviously, you have a front row seat to it, but I think everyone here can kind of comment. What are the like negative externalities of like lacking competition between validators, and kind of like what can we expect to see, like better behavior, better rewards? I'll kind of leave it open to you guys. But what can we expect to see from validators in a scenario where competition is ramped up to the max?
Yeah, well, competition can be good in some ways, and then obviously bad in others. We talked about like some of the negative MEV that that takes place as validators are competing against each other for stake, and it becomes more and more competitive, and you try to avoid consolidation as much as possible. It kind of becomes, okay, let's do whatever it takes, to get that stake. And then all we can do, right, and our job here is to try to be as transparent as possible with what's going on and try to catch some of those, negative MEV validators and remove them when we can. But yeah, at least for now, the way things are set up, like there is going to be a little bit of that negativity that comes from that spirit of competition, as there's only so much stake. They're all fighting over so much stake that you have. And then on the other side of it, like if that goes away, we could be looking at a lot of centralization and a lot of consolidation at the top, and I think we're already seeing some of that. And as these validators become more and more efficient, it's going to be a bit of like an arms race to the top. And the validators that are going to be the most optimized are likely going to be the largest, have the best rewards, and have the most stake, which kind of goes against the spirit of the chain a bit.
Mert just had an interesting little riff on, I think it was a Lightspeed podcast recently, where he talked about how normally there's like this like trade-off that crypto people have like kind of stuck to, which is this trade-off. I think it's known as like the trilemma, where you have to trade off between decentralization, performance, and what's the third one? Cost. Anyway, basically he went on this riff where you could actually have a very fast chain that's decentralized. And so even though, you could see the validator set get smaller, the competition is going to grow. And where there's competition, there's an incentive to participate in the network. And so, Solana might not have, 10,000 validators in the short term. Does it need 10,000 validators? No, probably just needs somewhere around, I don't know, if you just look at other L1s, I want to say Sui and Aptos have around 100. I think Solana has around 1,000 or more, 2,000, 3,000.
Validators.
Yeah, participating in the network.
Forget around that. Yeah.
Yeah, bottom line is, you'll probably see like less validators participating, but the competition will only improve, I guess, like the performance of the chain. And that has this like flywheel effect where more sophisticated validators are going to want to participate. And the more, I guess, diversity there is with sophisticated participants, the more decentralized the chain can continue to be.
Yeah, so it sounds like as a function of like delegators wanting max yield, you're going to have validators who get bigger and extract more MEV. Nitesh, we just had an interesting conversation about this. Do you agree? Like, are delegators and stakers the only ones that get a say, or like the end users, the retail users who are like submitting transactions on a chain, are they not considered enough here?
Yeah, I think you can't really fight economic incentives to some degree. So the current system incentivizes certain behavior because of how it's set up. I think the solution to this, which addresses a question of like validator stake centralization, is how do you actually change the network in ways that meaningfully change the economic incentives for the betterment of Solana users, SOL holders, and operators of the network. So from my perspective, the solution here is actually Solana protocol changes. And there are a lot of these that you will find active SIMDs about and maybe some dead SIMDs about as well. And then, personally, I'm quite excited about changes that allow the application to better express how to interact with the actual application. And so, when I say the word application here, I'm referring to protocols that are deployed to the chain by ecosystem builders. I think both of these things make very meaningful differences in how the economic incentives of the network as a whole can be pointed in the right direction, which today we're probably not yet at exactly, but will be soon.
The other thing I've heard from you guys is just the importance of transparency. It's an interesting take. Would be curious if you guys have thought more about how transparency can be implemented. Who takes on that burden? Each of you owns a small piece of the broader stack. So does one person have to step up and basically provide transparency to retail users as to how their transactions are being handled, or is there kind of a I think there's a social psych term for it, but everybody stands around watching because no one person is tasked with it?
At this stage, there's only so much transparency that we can offer or can be offered. So instead, and honestly, this is probably much simpler for the end user anyway, is just options. Very simple options where it's okay, you delegate your stake here, and we don't have, we don't have full control of all the validators that are involved in this group. Or there's another one over here, and this is very carefully curated. So it's you can go for what is the maximize rewards, or you can go for I want to make sure I'm not touching any negative MEV in any way. And honestly, I could see even 1, 2, 3, 4 other options coming up in the near future. But as for intricate transparency, about the nitty gritty details, yes, we all care about that, but regular people making a Coinbase account they don't care about that.
When given the choice between those options that you kind of outlined, what do delegators usually pick? Are they max rewards, or do they care about kind of?
I would say in this order, it's brand name is 1, and then maximize rewards is 2.
I'm also just curious, when you're asking about transparency, what transparency are you talking about? Can you be a little more specific?
I think just referring to I'm staking to this validator. I want to know that they're running kind of software that I feel is fair and kind of contributes positively to the network, as opposed to being very toxic.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. If you're also wondering about what software they're actually running, that's also something that people don't really have the right visibility over. You can tell the version of Solana on that stuff. You can tell if it's Jito or not, but that's very easy to fake. If they're running a mod or not, how do you know? It does kind of make verifiable builds kind of interesting. There's people doing stuff in the ZK front of basically verifying, I guess mathematically to say that this is actually running X piece of software. That could be an interesting direction for things to go at some point, to kind of prove there is no malicious mod on that validator. But it is always going to be kind of a cat and mouse game at the end of the day, especially when there's money involved. We already discussed in this panel, it's all about incentive alignment, and as long as there's an incentive to make significant money doing something malicious, people are always going to find a way to do it. And yeah, I think the best way we already mentioned here is to think about how can we reshift those incentives in a way that leads to more, I guess, better behavior, I suppose, for users and retail.
Yeah, transparency is really important. I think there are going to be ways that the chain will be able to sort of observe transparency. It's just the nature of the way I think decentralized financial networks will evolve. And so I think, yeah, these are solutions that we'll start to like learn more about as different teams experiment with different ideas. In terms of the way like the Jito network is transparent is we have StakeNet, which is basically this like on-chain validation criteria, this on-chain criteria that delegates stake across a pool of around 200 validators. And obviously that stake is GeoSol. And so, yeah, all of these metrics are observable. They are all on chain, and StakeNet's able to rotate this on an epoch basis. And then the other thing that developers could potentially benefit from in terms of like creating more verifiability around the stuff that they're building is the restaking protocol is a way that you could develop a protocol, a decentralized protocol, and maintain state on chain. And so if there is a component of your protocol that like is distributing rewards, if you needed a endorser network where you had to verify like this non-toxic versus toxic flow, you could track it all on chain with the restaking protocol. So those are a couple of things that we're building for more transparency on chain, but I'm excited for what the ecosystem develops for deeper parts of the stack.
Yeah, I think this question of transparency is a really good one. Super important, and I think about it categorically in terms of opt-in transparency versus mandated transparency. In a trustless system like Solana, you can only go so far with opt-in transparency. There will be validators offshore that are doing all sorts of malicious things for the betterment of themselves at the expense of users. So really the only solution in a trustless system is mandated transparency, and this is driven by the protocol itself, the Solana protocol, and sort of like what it requires to the extent that we can do cool cryptographic things like ZK verifiable builds. That's awesome, but at some point the protocol should probably start also pushing on this, which is, to be clear, a very active effort that a lot of extremely intelligent people are working on. So I'm quite optimistic about the direction that we're going there.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. We're going to shift gears a little bit. I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to talk about what you're excited about in your own projects. Anything that, like, on the horizon you want to share with the group, you're excited to ship an upgrade that you're excited for. Maybe it could be Solana more generally, or if it's within your protocol, we'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, I can start. So we had just shipped at Marinade Instant Unstake. We're making a big push right now, which it's funny because right now it feels like liquid staking is so popular, and Marinade is one of, if not the pioneer of liquid staking on Solana. And now obviously, all these guys are in liquid staking, and it's all over the place. It's very popular right now. So we picked the funniest time ever to now start pushing for native. So with that, it's like, okay, why do people love liquid staking so much? Like, why are they willing to take on even a small amount of smart contract risk to avoid it? And it's the liquidity, right? With these liquidity pools that we're setting up, we've got some already, and we need to obviously get that much larger. You'll have instant access to your Solana when you want it. It's my money, and I want it now. And obviously, it's got to be at 0 fee, right? Otherwise, you'd still mentally be better off liquid staking.
Yeah, I mean, we're always focused on reads and writes. So I think like one thing we released relatively recently behind the scenes though is much faster account-based queries. So, GPA, get program accounts, any of those calls way faster than before. But also what we're doing in the next little bit we're releasing is basically better historical queries. So, Hayden already mentioned, looking at the past, figuring out kind of who was malicious, who wasn't. We want to make that just a lot more flexible, a lot faster so that you can kind of get the information more easily. We're also doing improvements on the streaming side. So if you want to know what's happening right now, have a reliable, robust stream of data coming into your system, we want to basically solve that for you. Right now, people need to do a lot of workarounds, I guess, to deal with the existing tools, and yeah, we're releasing something to fix all that.
Historically, the Jito network has served participants that are fairly deep in the stack. So this is primarily validators. And also like very sophisticated traders that are submitting bundles and capturing like all this arbitrage value. And what we've seen, like I think over the past year or two of Solana just kind of continuing to grow is users and applications and developers in the Solana ecosystem are using the Jito network. So if you go on Jupiter or if you go on DFlow, you might have a preference to, instead of sending a priority fee, you could send a Jito tip. And it's just because it creates a better UX for users. And so I think the next evolution of the Jito network is going to involve building infrastructure for customers that aren't necessarily very deep in the stack. So like your everyday user and also application developers. And so one of the things that we're really focused on, at least this year, is the restaking protocol. So basically creating a framework where developers can decentralize their entire protocol or an aspect of the protocol. Restaking is this term that's been thrown around a lot over the past couple of years that people may or may not believe in. But the reason why we built it is because as the Jito network grows, it's important for us to think about decentralization and building protocol that decentralizes components of the Jito stack. And so Tip Reader is the first example of that. And I'm looking forward to seeing what other application developers in the Solana ecosystem, as their products mature, as they continue to make money and grow, what component of their stack they'd like to decentralize. And then, of course, like all the institutional stuff with Jito Sol, those are like probably the things that I'm most excited about anyway for the Jito network this year.
Yeah, for us, it's pretty straightforward. We're releasing some new stuff to streamline DEX integrations. So we should be, ingesting as much of liquidity that is posted to the Solana network as possible and constructing really sophisticated, high-quality routes through it. So for anyone building a DEX or interesting liquidity provision mechanism, feel free to reach out to us, and we can get you some flow.
Awesome. Well, a lot to be excited about with the folks on stage here. Before we wrap up, need to do the quintessential hot takes. What hot takes do you guys have about the Solana ecosystem, MEV, staking, where your view of the future varies from the rest of us?
I think a lot of people view meme coins as something that's ephemeral and might go away after some period of time. I think meme coins are here forever, and it's going to look a lot different than what it looks like today, but they'll stick around for sure.
Yeah, I can go next. I have a few, but I guess
Can you give me one?
Hmm?
Can you give me one of them?
Yeah, sure, I can do two. Well, one is that client diversity is kind of like a marketing sham. That's my take. I think that's for a couple of reasons. So first off, if you think of Jito as a second client, it's really not. It's kind of like something on top of the existing client. And same with and also you need for actual network security and robustness, the whole concept. For those unaware, people are basically saying client diversity is good because if one client has a bug, the whole network doesn't go down. But realistically, what you need is 4 different clients with 4 completely different implementations to have roughly equal stake distribution, because you need the network to be able to make a supermajority vote for it to actually maintain liveliness. And realistically, is that going to happen? No, it's really hard building an L1. No one's going to build 4 different ones today. And even if they do, whoever makes the one that is overall the fastest and best and generates the most revenue for operators, stakers, etc., is going to get more stake. You can see that with Jito. When Jito came in, it was 5-10% stake for a little while. And then once people kind of recognized it was good, it shot to 80% really quickly. And so same thing with maybe Firedancer or any new client that comes along. You'll see the similar behavior. And frankly, it's hard enough building these things that we want the best people focused on, maybe a couple implementations, not scattered across 50.
All right, hot take. What do I got? So what I would say is actually as more users come to Solana, potentially things could get even more centralized versus the other way. You're going to see a lot of stake rushing to the big brand names, which is kind of what I've been hinting at this whole time, your Coinbases and your Krakens and all that. And the people who care the most about decentralization and diversity of validators are already here. No more people are coming that are going to be caring about that. So it's going to be that much more important for teams like Jito and for Marinade to be giving people options where you can delegate stake to us and then spread it across tons and tons of mid-sized validators. And from the user's perspective, they understand that, but they don't need to understand all the details and why that's supporting the network and supporting decentralization. But yeah, there's probably not enough options like that as is. There should be more.
If centralization was a boss, I would just like look at it and say, bring it on. But I don't know. My hot take is, I guess it's related to meme coins. And first, like, we could debate on like what meme coins are, if they're going to stay or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But, to me, I think of meme coins as like the instrument that made the chain better. You can't make things faster. You can't engineer things without them exploding and then picking things up and fixing them. So that's what I think ultimately the meme coin like kind of cycle like gave us, is the opportunity to make things faster. But the hot take is that, and I'm going to take this from Ryan Connor, my buddy at Blockworks. I don't know which launchpad is going to capture this, but I think that the meme coin revenue, some launchpad is going to flip Pump Funds revenue from last year or up to this point.
Awesome. Well, clear bifurcation here. A little bit dystopian over here, and on the other side, we have meme coins are going to exist forever and a healthy competition in the launchpads. Thank you guys so much for joining. Come talk to the panelists after, and thanks so much.